All right, so I read Blood Meridian by the late, great Cormac McCarthy. This is my fifth Cormac McCarthy novel that I've read. I read the Passenger and Stella Maris box set, read those two books, and then I read The Road, which I really, really liked. I liked the Passenger and Stella Maris. I think I read them at the beginning of last year, and I think perhaps I don't think I read them with enough attention, and so I want to go back and read them again at some point. Maybe not this year, maybe next year. We'll have to see. But I read those. I read The Road, and then I read Child of God relatively recently. And I had tried to read Blood Meridian before. And again, I just did not read it with enough attention. It is despite the content, if you were just talking about the way that this book is written, it is a very, very beautiful book. It is also a very, very horrifying book. But just the level of prose. I told my friend, I was like, it's like reading a 350-page prose poem. And that might be a slight exaggeration, but like the writing in this is just absolutely gorgeous. Their way led now through dwarf oak and ilex and over a stony ground where black trees stood footed in the seams on the slopes. They rode through sunlight and high grass, and in the late afternoon they came out upon an escarpment that seemed to rim the known world. Below them in the paling light smoldered the plains of St. Augustine, stretching away to the northeast, the earth floating off in a long curve silent under looms of smoke from the underground coal deposits burning there 1,000 years. The horses picked their way along the rim with care, and the riders cast varied glances out upon that ancient and naked land. And that's just a random page that I opened to and read a paragraph of. This book is absolutely full of just absolutely beautiful, gorgeous nature writing, whether that's human nature or like the natural world. It's just good. You could break this novel down and you could study it and you could read it again and again, and you could probably pull so much from it. That's not what I'm going to try to do here. I think most of all, I just kind of want to encourage you to read this. I failed the first time I tried to read this. But also, I think having that background, like I had read the first 142 pages last time. I went back, and I think having read those 142 pages helped me get more from this, reading it this time. So I think when I go back, and I will go back, when I go back and read this book again, I think I will get even more from it. I think it is something that will hold up to rereads very, very well. And I'm not saying anything I'm not saying anything that hasn't been said before. It is a horrifying book, like I mentioned earlier, and this is no secret. This is a novel that is based on true events in American history of clearing the Native Americans, the indigenous peoples, from the land to make way for settlements and stuff. There's a lot of violence in this book, and a lot of violence, not for the sake of violence from the book's perspective, but like the people going out doing this, who went out and brought back the heads and the scalps for money. it's just a really important book because it's fiction, yes, but it's based on things that actually happened, and it portrays them in a very um, objective light. You're not rooting for these people, but also McCarthy is not explaining to you why what they're doing is bad. He trusts you as a reader to realize that yourself by showing you these scenes of just terrible acts being repeated over and over again. And I think that is something that maybe doesn't happen so often with books these days. I mean, they're out there. I feel like it's a great example of show don't tell. If you're around any sort of like writing at all, they're like show don't tell, show don't tell. He's not telling you what they're doing is wrong. He's not like showing you something that happens and being like, and this was wrong. Like, you know it's wrong. If you have not read this before, I would say go for it. Approach it with respect, but not trepidation. It is a book you will have to focus to get through. It is not an easy book, but it's also not a terribly, terribly difficult book. I think if you focus and pay attention to what's going on, you will probably be fine. I would say this is maybe not the best starting point for McCarthy. I would say The Road would be a lot easier, and I haven't read all the Pretty Horses, but from what I understand, that one is also a little bit more approachable. But I don't think that means you can't read this first. Just understand that it is going to be a little difficult, and that I mean, I don't feel like I understood every single thing in this book. I think it is a book that I'm going to reread, like I said. So yeah, would encourage you to give this a shot if you haven't, and if you get into it and you're like, I'm not ready yet, come back to it later. And I think you're essentially rereading when you do that. Not the whole thing, but every bit helps. So yeah, there we go.